Councillors, officers and members of the public, welcome to the 6th of March 2024 Ordinary Meeting of Council. I will now open the meeting with the first item of this evening's agenda, the reading of the prayer. Almighty God, be with us as we work for the people of the Shire of Moorabool. Grant us wisdom that we may care for the Shire as true stewards of your creation. May we be aware of the great responsibilities placed upon us. Help us to be just in all our dealings, and may our work prosper for the good of all. Amen. I will now read the Acknowledgement of Country. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. In accordance with Moorabool Shire's governance rules, the Council will be recording and live streaming this meeting. The Moorabool News and Star Weekly have also been granted permission to record this meeting. I will move on to item 4 and 5, present and apologies. We have all councillors present with Councillor Edwards online. Councillors, we have minutes from the 7th of February 2024 Ordinary Meeting of Council to be confirmed. Do I have a councillor to move that the minutes be confirmed? Councillor Dudzik, seconded by Councillor Berry. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Item 7, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest to declare? No? Thank you. Councillors, we have not received any questions from the public for public question time this evening. There are no petitions listed in the agenda for item 9. Item 10, there are no presentations or deputations listed in the agenda. Councillors, we will now move on to the Chief Executive Officer's reports, item 11.1, place naming policy for adoption. There are no registered speakers to this item. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation outlined in the agenda? Councillor Ward, seconded by Councillor Dudzik. Is there any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. The next report is item 11.2, 2021-2025 Moorabool Shire Council Plan Progression Report, Quarter 2, December 2023. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation? Councillor Sullivan, do I have a second? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Edwards. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Item 11.3, 2017 to 2021 Moorabool Shire Council Plan Outstanding Actions Progress Report Q2, December 2023. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation?
Just a question, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Sullivan.
Why would it be 2017 to 2021 now we're in 2024?
Mr CEO.
It's just a typo.
I'll have to double check. I'm assuming it's just a typo or else it's items that were carried forward. I think what it is the items were carried forward from the previous year plan, but they actually form part of the new plan, so that's why.
Do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Thank you, Councillor Berry as a seconder. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, we will now move on to Community Planning and Development Reports, item 12.1, Amendment C104, Anomalies for Adoption. Do I have a councillor to move the recommendation?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Ward. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Community Strengthening Reports. Item 13.1, Gordon Recreation Reserve Master Plan Final. There are no registered speakers for this item. Councillors, you have a recommendation in your paper. Do I have a question? Councillor Ward, yes.
I'm just waiting to see if this microphone turns on.
Sorry, Councillor Ward, we'll just... We'll get you a microphone. We'll just share microphones. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I'd like to commend everyone involved in the preparation of the master plan for the Gordon Recreation Reserve. I think it gives the community a lot of direction, and there's obviously been a lot of cooperation by the various community groups in Gordon during the preparation of this. I do have a couple of questions though. I note amongst the high priorities, oval, pavilion, etc. If I can ask my fellow councillors to refer to page 122 of our notes. It notes that the existing pavilion and change rooms was built about 40 years ago out of Besser blocks, and it's not suitable for. It's approaching end of life, and it's certainly not suitable to encourage female participation. So there's absolutely no question that the pavilion and change rooms need investment to bring it up to modern day standards. What interests me though is there was a comparison made with the Gordon Hall, where the kitchen is not compliant, space is unattractive, toilets need upgrading and so on. So there's no question investment needs to be made into a community facility in Gordon. And my question, I suppose, for officers is council could not expend millions of dollars upgrading two community spaces. I understand that the football netball club provides a social connection and a lot of the social fabric for the community, but there'll be equally those in the community that think and recognise the historical importance of the Gordon Hall. So I think as a council, I'm more than happy to move that we adopt this master plan, but I think what we should do is do more community engagement and just see how the community feel about investment in a new pavilion. I've got no question that change rooms are needed, a new pavilion versus the need for improvements at the Gordon Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Mr Seah?
Yeah, through the chair, the Gordon master plan was completed by the committee. When we actually walk through what's required, I'm sure there will be broader consultation around those two particular assets, but also the broader assets within the Gordon community. So I would see that as the next stage.
Councillor Sullivan, you have a question?
Well, it's just so much a comment. We're not adopting this. It's not our master plan. We're only noting it. So I just want to make it quite clear we're not adopting this plan. It's
Thank you.
belongs to the Gordon Recreation Reserve Committee, which is a DECA committee, and so that's where it sits. Thank you.
It does, thank you. So, Councillor Ward, you moved yes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tatchell. Do I have any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. The next report, item 13.2, Draft Fair Access Policy. Councillors, are you in your papers tonight? Do I have someone to move the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. Do I have a second?
Madam Mayor, I would second it with a slight amendment with your indulgence, and the move is indulgence, where it says the plan on exhibition for 4 weeks. I'm thinking, given that Easter comes in between, I thought perhaps 6 weeks might be, unless there is some reason why it can't be sort of put out, just because Easter's going to come in between there. I think it's only fair and reasonable we extend that little bit of extra time. So unless someone can tell me that in fact it can't be sort of done, I would suggest 6 weeks.
I accept changing it to 8 weeks.
8 weeks?
I'll go 10.
Mrs McCallum. Yes.
Through the chair, the rationale behind the time frame for the 4-week period is to ensure that we meet the timeline of the 1st of July for the adoption of the policy, which is a requirement of the state government.
So we'll leave it at 4 weeks? Okay, we'll leave it at 4 weeks. Thank you, thank you, officers. So I have a mover and a second. Do I have any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, we will now move on to Customer and Corporate Services Report, item 14.1. Or have I just missed one? Sorry, I did I was questioning myself. Item 13.3, Community Asset Committees reports. Councillors, do I have a mover for the recommendation in the papers? Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. Seconded by Councillor Tatchell. Do I have any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Item 14.1, Audit and Risk Advisory Committee of Council reports. Councillors, I'm in your hands for the recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Seconded by Councillor Berry. Do I have any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Item 14.2, December 2023 Quarterly Financial Report. Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Ward.
Yeah, I'd like to move it again, but with a comment.
Yes.
I just think it's a very pleasing result, and up to a report. I commend all involved and who've been involved in managing our enormous capital improvement program, including new works and asset renewal and upgrades. And again, as I've said repeatedly in the past, I note the efforts of those in sourcing funding and grants to manage that. So I think Council's efforts over the past few years to maintain a healthy position against unprecedented inflation, high increase in construction costs and with rate caps set below CPI has to be recognised. So I move it and I commend all involved.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Berry? Councillor Tatchell, did you want to speak or are you just seconding it? Okay, so I accepted Councillor Berry as a seconder. Do I have any dissent? No. All those in favour? Carried. Item 14.3, consideration of intent to seek a rate cap variation for 2024-2025. This is on page 36 of your agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tatchell? Do I have any dissent? Councillor Ward. Councillor Dudzik, you can open the debate. Thank you.
We previously had this discussion. Council staff have done the figures and they've assessed that we do not need to apply for the rate cap variation in this financial year. We have very talented staff and I trust that they've done it correctly, and we have a responsibility to our ratepayers to keep our rates low, and that's why I don't believe we should be applying for a variation to the rate cap.
Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. As the opposition, Councillor Ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dudzik. Councillors, I would just ask you to indulge with me for a moment because I have done a bit of research here, and I want to make it very clear from the outset that I don't want to impose an additional rate increase on the ratepayers of the Mirrabul Shire Council. I'm voting against the recommendation to not apply, to simply bring to the attention the cumulative effect of rate increases that has been below CPI over the past few years, cost shifting from the state and federal government to LGAs that have led to declining cash reserves for councils, council costs increasing faster than CPIs, construction costs continuing to rise, and total borrowings have increased right across the local government sector. No councils have chosen to apply for additional rates increase since 2019 due to the lack of confidence they have in that would be approved. Mirrabul Shire Council itself has not applied for a rate increase above the cap in the past 7 years. On that basis, I want to speak against it, and I have some facts to back to support the arguments and to raise my concerns. Rateable income provides, on average, 69% of a local government's revenue. In our case, it wasn't that high last year due to the great work in cancelling and attracting grants. But the Municipal Association of Victoria has reported that between 21 and 25, the population in regional Victoria will increase by 646,000 to 2.28 million. That means 233 dwellings need to be built a week in regional Victoria. The current population in Mirrabul is 36,000 and will increase to about 65,000 by 2041. And Bacchus Marsh's population alone will increase from 27,000 to an expected 46,000. Without support from the state government and proactive planning and investment in and for peri-urban councils such as Mirrabul and regional rural councils, that growth won't be accommodated for, and our communities and our ratepayers will suffer the consequences. The role of the council is to provide good governance and ensure the benefit and well-being of our municipality. I accept that rate capping ensures accountability, but council must be permitted to match revenues to meet its increased responsibilities and to meet community expectation and needs for better infrastructure, services, and particularly noting the expected population increase. The gaps between rate caps, inflation, rising construction costs, etc. is growing. Despite that, I think Mirrabul Council has done a great job in recent years in meeting those challenges. And it's worth noting that in 2023, for every dollar paid in rates, the Marlborough Shire Council invested $1.39 on capital works and community infrastructure, whilst also providing over 200 services to the community. For example, Marlborough Shire Council has approximately 1,500 kilometres of sealed and unsealed roads to maintain. We also have 215 kilometres of footpaths, 107 bridges, 248 kilometres of underground drainage, 2,400 culverts, 297 kilometres of curb and channels, 103 public buildings across the Shire, over 560 hectares of parks and reserves and 62 playgrounds. Last year our waste team did 1.2 million bin lifts. This is not sustainable if the state government continues to cap rates below CPI, and especially in cases where that amount has been below that recommended by the Essential Services Commission. This is also being done whilst the state government has used local councils as a collection agency for their own fees and charges. And I want to give you an example of that with my own residential property. Over the past 4 years, 2021 to 23-24, CPI totaled 23%. The rate increases capped by the state government across that period was 9.5%. That's a 14% difference. However, the state government increased the state landfill levy over those years by 58% on our rates. The CFA charges went up 11%. That is 48.5% for the state landfill levy above and beyond the state's mandated rate cap. CPI has totaled 23% over this period, which is 14% above the rate increases. Effectively, councils are being asked to do more as our population increases with 14.3% less revenue. On top of that, and another example of the increased financial pressure the state government is imposing on local government, our work cover costs have increased by 33% over the last 12 months, and that equates to a figure well over $1 million. As I said, my concern is that the gap between rate caps, inflation, rising construction costs is growing, and it is not sustainable. In addition to this, and my final comment will be, there's been a trend of cost shifting from state and federal government to local government. Local government is often seen as a place of last resort by members of the community. The cost shifting has been estimated by the Australian Local Government Association to be somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion federally or nationally per annum, and even the most conservative estimate by the Municipal Association of Victoria approximates that amount to be $40 million per year across the state. Examples of cost shifting to Victorian councils highlighted by a recent submission to the state government includes reduced funding for libraries, school crossing supervision, maternal and child health, early years infrastructure, building services, urban planning, state infrastructure projects and environmental protection. The significant impact that cost shifting has had and is having on financial sustainability of local government is threatening councils' ability to continue to provide essential services that enable the livability of communities. I encourage the Marlborough Shire Council to challenge the state government's imposed rate caps simply because the current trend of the state government capping rates below CPI whilst increasing their own fees and charges well above CPI and at the same time passing on costs to local governments is not sustainable, and in the long term it will be to the detriment of our ratepayers. For this reason, I believe the rate cap must be challenged. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Tatchell, as a seconder, would you like to speak?
Well, thank you, Councillor Ward. You've actually given an argument for the affirmative, the defence, the whole. You've gone everywhere. You've got it all. You give me a complete package. It's magnificent. Let's face it, the fair go rate system was the greatest marketing exercise that any government could have done, because at the end of the day, it's this great charade of if we contain rates at a CPI and have 1%. For infrastructure, that will look like we're doing a fantastic job in reducing the cost of living throughout Victoria, when the reality is all it's done is put everything else up. So, you know, it's like giving one and taking with the other. Councillor Ward's right, that is a cost shift. It's always been a cost shift and it will remain a cost shift. The bravery of the last couple of years is that now they actually call it a tax, which at one time it was just called rates. And once upon a time, rates were just about the basics that you needed in your community, and the state government, the federal government looked after everything else. But I don't know if you've ever seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and Robert Helpman's in the carriage and he's, come on you little children, come and play with this. And he guides these people into the back of the jail that's on wheels to say that I'm going to give you everything you want, I'm going to give you sweets and chocolates. And, you know, the world's going to be your oyster. And at the end of the day, it was all bullshit. I mean, that's where it landed. And we'll continue to do that while we continue to accept what they're feeding us. And Rob was quite correct in saying that you know, if you look at the state government costs, I mean, registrations, land taxes. I mean, how do you land tax something where someone who's already paid taxes on the money they paid for the land, then we charge them for the stamp duty, and then we charge them for the land tax? Well, they've already paid the tax, and now we call it a tax. Well, you know, it's about time that we got rid of that addiction. When they talk about having injecting rooms, we need an injecting room for government. So, because the addiction to taxes needs to be contained within one space, and that's usually the ATO. But what's happening now is that all levels of government have been forced into that Robert Helpman, we will give you this if you put your money into that. If you take on this and take on our responsibility, we'll give you some dough in the first instance, but then you'll be paying for it later. And inevitably what happens is your ratepayers are continuing to subsidise both state and federal government. What we need to do is go to the source and stop the addiction in the first place. We need to get back to basics, start living within our means, and get serious about what our role is. I think the 12 years I've been here, that I don't think every time we put the question up, what is our role, it gets incredibly confused because we're continually trying to pander to the state government, or pander to the feds. We're always pandering to someone. But at the end of the day, who panders to us? Nobody. And it's not just a cost shift, it's an emotional shift, because when you go and talk to we're the coalface. We're right at the living edge of the coalface. When you go and talk to the punters and they say, well, my rates have gone up by this and my garbage charge has gone up by this, and on this perception of wealth basis, that because that's how rates are calculated, they don't go up by 2.9%. It's a perception of wealth. And there's not a balance sheet in the world that works on perception. It works on reality. Luckily, we've got a CEO that's a bloody accountant, so he knows the difference between the two. And that's probably why we're keeping our head above water, for no other reason. So what I'm saying is that, during elections or council elections, we see a lot of councils out there saying, we're going to do zero rates and we're going to do this, going to set the world on fire. And then they get in there and get hosed down by the realities of the cost shift between state and federal governments. We get hosed down by the realities of why we can't do stuff. I was talking to Ballarat Council the other day, and they get 4 times the day we get. We've got 3 times the road network they've got to look after. They're getting beaten up over potholes, and we're trying to maintain all of those road networks that Rob was talking about. And they said, how do you live on that sort of day? And I said, well, we're a little bit frugal. We've got an accountant as a boss, and basically we live within our means. But next term we won't be doing that. Next term we won't be doing that. We've grown to a $90-odd million show this year, in terms of capital works. So the capital works that Rod spoke of won't be there next year because the dough won't be there. That's the reality. That's the basis of. And if you're in business, you know that straight away when you go into your budget every quarter and say, what are we going to do this next quarter, and sales are down. Or, look at the growth for this year. When it was all boiled down, we have high inflation that got up around 5.5%, but our actual economic growth in this country was 1.5%. All that says to me is we've got a heap of woke morons running the country because they don't know what their job is. And I think this, of all budgets, will be an opportunity for the councillors that sit here to have a look in the mirror and say, what are we about? What is our job? Who do we work for? How do we make this work? And the bottom line will be we always need to live within our means, because I can tell you something, you can't buy your way into liquidity. It doesn't work. And you can't borrow your way into liquidity. At some point in time, you'll feel a cool breeze against where the back pocket is on your jeans, because you'll have the arse out of your pants, and that's the reality of economics. If you buy watermelons for $1 and you sell them for 95 cents, You won't need a big truck to take them to market, I can tell you that. So, from my view, Rod, I'm not sure what your argument was, but I think it works, even if you voted against it. But I will, I want to see the day when an actual council gets elected and walks in here and says, I'm voting for a zero rate increase, and just see what happens. And put that back in the state government and see what they're going to do with it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. I'll invite any other councillors to speak on the matter. Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And I commend both Councillor Tatchell and Councillor Ward on their comments. Councillor Ward, I can't argue with everything you're saying is correct. What I can say is the people out there are suffering. 2.75, our officers have told us that it can work, and as Councillor Tatchell said, we have a CEO who is an expert accountant, he tells us many times, and I trust that we are going to make it through the next year. I don't think, agree, Councillor Ward, this is not sustainable, not going forward. And I just want to add, I talk to many people out there, the pensioners. Australia says they're suffering. Cost of living has just got out of hand. So for me, yeah, rate increases do need to happen, but I just don't think it's the right time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Councillor Sullivan, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't be as long or elegant as my learned colleagues on my left. I don't support this, not because of if the last time it came to council it was decided we'd defer this until we received advice from officers. We've just received that and haven't had a chance to actually put it through a briefing, which we normally do, to see what council may or may not do. Some sobering facts, Madam Mayor, if I may. This, for the 24-25 financial year, Moorabool is going to generate an underlying operating surplus, loss rather, of 1.5 million. Now, there's very few businesses that can sustain losses year on year like that and remain viable. And I'm not advocating for that we actually increase rates. When I asked for the deferral last time, I wanted to say we got the information. We've only just basically received it, and yet here we are proceeding to say, no, we're not going to, without even analysing that information thoroughly and properly to make a mature, sober decision on the long-term future of this municipality. And it is our responsibility to look after the long-term welfare of this municipality. I understand people would say that this could increase rates. I'm not suggesting it, but what I'm saying is we do have to go into this with our eyes wide open and be sure of what we're saying, because down the track, decisions made here tonight will have impact for the next 10 years, because rates by their very nature are compounding. The annual percentage rate is based on a compound, so what is reduced this year is less next year, so on and so forth. So I've been analysing some of the figures that were supplied by the officers just recently, and it's 10 years down the track, it's quite significant. So I think we have to have regard to that. So I oppose this decision, not because of what the other, my fellow councillors say, but the fact we haven't had a chance to digest it properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any other councillors wish to speak? No. Councillor Dudzik, I will ask you, as the mover of the item, to please close the debate. Thank you.
We have a responsibility to our ratepayers to keep rates low and affordable. We've heard many councillors make election promises to keep our rates low, and we've got a responsibility to keep that. We've got a responsibility to families, pensioners, retirees and businesses to keep their rates low. We represent the residents. That's what our job is. And they want their rates low. And we need to actually listen to the community who will answer, balance your books so that our rates are affordable.
Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. I will now put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? It is carried. Councillors, we will now move on to Community Assets and Infrastructure Reports, item 15.1, Capital Improvement Program, Quarterly Report, December 2023. There are no registered speakers to this item. Councillors, do I have a mover for the recommendation?
Questions, please.
Yes, Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have 3 questions, if I may.
Yes.
On page 173 of our documents, it talks about the Bald Hill 1,000 Steps Stage 3, which is the Summit Trail and the Lookouts. The update provided was project was approved by Council in October. However, the contract has not yet been awarded to the Cultural Heritage Management Plan conditions. I'd like to know what those conditions were. And I'd also, it says construction is scheduled for February 2024. Has that been pushed out further? And what has been the cost of that Cultural Heritage Management Plan, please?
Mr Jeffrey, thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So we now have the Cultural Heritage Management Plan approved and in place. So that means we now can commence works on site, and the conditions on that were quite minimal around what was found on site, so it won't impact the project significantly at all. In terms of the cost of the plan, it was incorporated into the overall project budget. I just don't have at hand the exact cost, so I might have to take that on notice.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I just want to explain, I certainly understand the importance of Cultural Heritage Management Plan, but there has been significant media of late about the unavailability of consultants to do those and how it's been delaying projects. If I may, I have 2 more questions, please.
Yes, that's
on
fine.
Page 174, the netball court resurfacing at Gordon and Wallace, due to kick off in March 24. I understand, I've worked in football and netball for a little time. The clubs start playing practice matches in March and their season starts in April. I would have thought it would have been odd to schedule these works leading into the season, particularly when the relaying or the resurfacing of those courts does benefit from good weather. So can I please have an update on what's happening to the availability of the Gordon and Wallace netball courts for those clubs for the start of the season, please, and when that project's expected to be finished?
Mr Jeffrey.
Through you, Madam Chair. So in terms of the timing of those, there was we had to wait for grant confirmation to come through before we could commence, so that's why it's scheduled now. Otherwise, ordinarily, we would have done it over the summer period. In terms of Gordon, that's the second court that's being surfaced, not the main court, so it won't impact their season necessarily. But those works are scheduled to be completed before the commencement of the season.
Thank you, Mr Jeffries. One last question on this, please, Madam Mayor. Page 175, Aqualink Stage 2. I think one of the best projects I've ever seen in Bacchus Marsh or Moorabool has been the Aqualink, and I commend those involved in being it. I've ridden it often, and I think it's a beautiful, beautiful ride, and a lot of people are strolling and riding on it every day. However, the low light is the underpass, which is mentioned in this report. It is, it's far from an eyesore. It's actually quite dangerous, and it's very uncomfortable going through there. And I note that the hold-up with this is the Department of Transport approval for the underpass works. And can I ask for an update on when we can expect the Department of Transport to approve those works, please?
Mr Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Interestingly, the Department of Transport has the pressure on us to complete the project, but yes, they need to give us approval to do those works. So the mechanism there is that whilst the public have been using that for years, there is no official agreement between Council and Department of Transport for the maintenance of that underpass, and they want to establish that officially before they give us permission to go and put in lighting and some other things in that underpass. So we've already documented the works and we're already quoting it. It's just waiting for that final agreement to come, and then we'll finalise that procurement and implement.
Thank you, Mr Jeffrey. Is that all the questions, Councillor Ward?
Yes.
Great. Do I have a mover for the item? Thank you, Councillor Ward. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tatchell? Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Item 16, other reports. There are no other reports listed in the agenda. Item 17, notices of motion. We have received one notice of motion. 17.1, need for increased capacity for Bacchus Marsh Men's Shed. Councillor Ward, would you like to speak on the item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I've put up a notice of motion. Myself, Councillor Edwards and Councillor Berry accepted an invitation to visit the Bacchus Marsh Men's Shed, and I understand and thank the council officers that also accepted a recent invitation to visit the Bacchus Marsh Men's Shed. The men's shed, it was established in 2009, and there's 1,200 men's sheds across Australia. I'm not going to read the whole document, but I will say the men's shed provides an important meeting place for many men, and it helps build better communities by fostering community spirit, cultivating social connection and contributing to building a more inclusive Australia. Many people struggle in Australia, not just men or women, but...
Sorry, Councillor
Point of
Ward.
order, Madam Mayor. Actually, the councillor is speaking to the motion. It hasn't even been put yet.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Councillor Ward, are you moving the motion?
I'll move the motion, thank you.
Okay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tatchell, any dissent? So...
All in favour?
All in favour? All in favour? Carried.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, can I just ask a couple of questions?
Yes.
Is it too late? Yeah.
It sort of is. Anyway, we'll move on. Item 18, notices of rescission. There are no notices of rescission listed in the agenda. Item 19.1, Mayor's Report. Councillors, you have a recommendation in your papers before you. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Tatchell. Any dissent? All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, the next item on the agenda is councillors' reports. I will go around the room. Councillor Sullivan, do you have anything to report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of items to report. Last Thursday, the 29th of February, in the afternoon, I attended the Timber Towns Victoria meeting online. A lot of discussion about the government's decision to bring forward the closure of native harvesting on public land. This decision is causing considerable pain in councils in the east of the state, with many small towns dependent on timber for their economic survival and well-being. Interesting, as a consequence of that, there's been an upsurge in applications for native timber harvesting on private land, which is causing some councils some concern. And also there's been great interest by timber companies to establish plantations on broadacre farming land in the west of the state. The reality is that there's still an ongoing demand for timber, and the closure of the harvesting of the native timber in the public lands will not stop that demand. It is actually a multi-billion-dollar business, the timber industry, the importation into Australia. So I suspect that we may feel some of that as well as companies, timber companies and superannuation funds, that's where this money is coming from on the west, are proposing to put hundreds of millions of dollars into plantation timber to basically try and cover that shortfall that's going to occur. Thursday in the evening, along with your good self, Madam Mayor, I attended the Committee for Ballarat dinner at Creswick, where Moorabool, unbeknown to the Mayor and myself, received a membership certificate. I must admit it was a very interesting evening with a number of projects that the Committee for Ballarat is working on, some of which I would suggest may not align with Moorabool's view of the world, and I think it's a conversation that needs to be had at some future briefing as to whether in fact Moorabool continues our association with that organisation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Ward.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Nothing to report, but I just wanted to finish up by commending our Chief Emergency Management Officer and everyone that was involved in supporting the community during the recent bushfires. The communication between the communities and the cooperation between the Incident Control Centre in Ballarat and Geelong, and the councils in between was fantastic, and reportedly from those involved, best they've seen. The Mirrabul staff that volunteered to support the Relief Centre here in Balan, thank you for donating their time and supporting the community. And I know there was structures lost, but to get out of what was a potentially disastrous situation with, well, probably not the expected destruction that we feared or expected may happen, was somewhat of a relief. But again, congratulations, or thank you, not congratulations, thank you to everyone involved, in particular to our Chief Emergency Management Officer.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Tatchell.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to back Tom up on that. I think the fact that the Committee of Ballarat continually trades off our wind farms and solar farms and they don't own one, they haven't got one, and they're not going to build one. But they're out there getting grants and flogging it to the Chris Bowens of this world. And you know, I think we get used on these occasions. I've been to a couple of those meetings myself, and I think they use us for recognition for something that we don't actually recognise as being one of ours. So I completely agree with Councillor Sullivan on that. Further that, I was at the Rosalie Hall a couple of weeks ago. Look, it's a sad state of affairs when I'm sitting at a meeting and I'm the youngest. You know, I'm looking across the room and I'm saying, you know, the next person that comes in will be Tobin Brothers. I mean, because this is the problem. We have all of this growth down the valley, and yet we've had no way of bringing young people into that committee. Those people have been on the committee now, some of them 50, 60 years, and they're worn out. You know, and there's no one coming up through the ranks. And I know I had to be their chairman for a year because they just couldn't get anyone. And I think we really need to sit down with them and say, how do we... I mean, if the Rosalie Hall is to survive, one, it needs an upgrade. It hasn't anything done to it since the Second World War, really. It's been kept immaculate, considering how old it is. But we need to get out there and say, right, what can we do? We've still got an outside... So I'm surprised a night truck doesn't turn up there. You know, talking about disabled toilets, I mean, I seriously think we need to just get out there and say, what are we going to do? And because it does get used, and the public out there, the people out there do use it, but we need to find a way of getting more people in and getting the thing operational again, and maybe throw a few bucks at it and try and make the thing work, because I think it's going to be an important part of our future, and if we lose it, it'll be lost for all time, and there'll be no meeting place. And the fires down the valley the other week are a great reminder that you need these buildings, regardless of how often they get used. Country people need a central point that they know and understand and know that's safe. So that's on that matter. So the other one is, I asked at the last meeting about the POW. I'm not going to labour on this, but I didn't get an answer. So I went to the POW committee and said, why? Because Mirrabul is heavily involved in that memorial, and it was actually one of our Mirrabul residents that designed it. It's the biggest one in Australia. And I said, I want to know why we weren't invited. And we've never missed one, that's from what I can see. Now, I don't care who goes, but we need to be represented. Now, they've come back and said, no, well, you were invited. Well, I said, well, not that I'm aware of. So then I went to the Ballarat Council, which is a bit like going to Disneyland. But anyhow, I found Mickey Mouse and he told me exactly the same thing, that we were invited, but we had no one available. Now, I want that investigated, because the people, the relations of the people that designed that memorial were very, very upset that we weren't in attendance or we didn't have a representative from Mirrabul. Not to mention Albanese came down there himself. So by the next meeting, I'd really like an answer to know where we're at, to make sure it never happens again. And I don't care if we've got to send the RSL there, but we need to have someone from Mirrabul present at that POW thing. Otherwise, we'll get lost in the wash-up. So that's that. And before I finish, and I don't want to labour it, I'm going to seek your indulgence. I'd just like to note the passing of Bruce Snaith. Bruce has been in part of Balan as long as I can remember, saying to his dad. His dad was Lee was a Second World War warrior that kept the RSL afloat for many, many years here. Bruce took on the tradition later. They've had a rough trot, the Snaith family. I mean, We lost Beverly a few years ago, and now we've lost Bruce. These are young people, younger than me. So it's very, very sad that that's happened. But I'd just like to just mention a few of the things that they've been involved in over the years. Nearly everything in this town, from when I first came here 35 years ago, there were 685 houses, and today there's somewhere around 3,500. So when we were here, way back when, the first people you'd see at everything that was being built, or every time there was something that needed to be done for the town, because in those days we had to do it ourselves, as Tom would remember, that's up to his area. You would always see the Snaith people front and centre. It'd be Bruce who'd volunteer a truck, or he'd volunteer whatever equipment he had to make sure we could keep the show on the road, or get the baling twine out and try and make things happen, autumn festivals. All of these things, these people continually, the football club, the netball club, there's not an inch of the land where you would not have seen a Snaith at some point in time, either volunteer time, money, whatever they had available, and they'd give you the shirt off their back to do it. So I'd just like to acknowledge Bruce, and I think it's a great loss to our community. He was taken way too young, and just the fact that he was a fellow transport operator too, that he's going to be missed in the transport industry as well, because he was the lifeblood of this town in terms of bringing goods and services at a time when it was pretty hard to make a quid out of trucks in small towns. Bruce made the effort, and all of the fuel supplies and the super supplies, all that things were all handled by us, even the gas. So I'd just like to acknowledge Bruce. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Councillor Edwards, did you have any report?
Yeah, just one small thing, Madam Mayor. It probably goes along with Councillor Ward's motion in relation to the men's shed. So, as Councillor Ward's already pointed out, a number of the councillors that have met with the men's shed, and I'd just like to say that it's pretty impressive the service that they provide to the community and how important it is to people, for a vast raft of reasons. Some people, are single, they've lost partners, other people are retired, don't know what to do with themselves. Other people are just looking for connection within the community, and other people are just looking to actually get on and do a bit of work with their hands. So they're probably their success has been their problem. They've grown rapidly. They've outgrown the space they're currently in, and I look forward to hearing from the report that will come from the motion from Councillor Wood tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for noting that, Councillor Edwards, and apologies for myself for not opening it up for people to speak. I rushed through that item. Councillor Berry.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, rest in peace, Bruce Nath. On Thursday, the 15th of February, I attended the Tourism West Victoria meeting in Bacchus Marsh at the Royal Hotel. It was encouraging to see local businesses attending, although it seemed like a very focused meeting on Ballarat tourism activities. There were some opportunities for local business that was discussed, however. On Saturday, the 17th of February, I attended the Coffee with a Councillor at Darley Market with Councillor Ward and Councillor Dudzik. I think we got quite a few comments that it was that the community liked and appreciated the one-on-one access that they had, and we were kept busy throughout the morning, and thanks to Councillor Ward for getting all the equipment there and setting it up. On Saturday the 24th of Feb, I attended the Bacchus Marsh Lawn Tennis Club Gay Day on the Green. It was great to hear they had a few international entries, so that event is organised through an international consultation, so they are a member of that. So they do put together great club events down at Bacchus Marsh Lawn Tennis Club. Monday the 26th of Feb, all day, I attended, along with the CEO, the Peri-Urban Council's Victoria delegation meetings with both government ministers and MPs, and as well as opposition MPs in Canberra. PUCV gains further traction due to these meetings, and pleased to say the local government minister advised us they are planning a peri-urban forum as part of the local government National Congress in July in Canberra. The focus on these delegation meetings was to have conversations on the government implementing a future fund for peri-urban councils' growth areas. So that's a proposal that through Mesh Planning, a consultation group that we hope to gain traction with as the Peri-Urban Councils Victoria. On Friday the 1st of March, this wasn't a council event. I attended the Bacchus Marsh West Golf free evening for a women's health night with some guest speakers on breast cancer. And just to note, men can also get breast cancer. However, this night was for women only. There was 125 women from around the area that attended this event, which was fantastic. And this was all organised through Dr Rav Sadai, who also organises men's health nights. It was a very informative night, and women didn't hold back on talking about breast cancer and also some pelvic floor issues, which I think there was a couple of men that were helping out in the bar that soon disappeared out of the bar when they started to get quite vocal about different parts of the women's anatomy. It was an excellent night, and I really wanted a big shout out to Dr Rav Sadai because I have heard about his men's nights as well. Excellent work to him. On Tuesday the 5th of March, which was just yesterday, I attended the Rural Councils Victoria event at the Windsor Hotel along with Mayor Ali Minari, and then Parliament House also with Mayor Ali Minari to listen to the Premier, who was a surprise visit, and a few ministers. It was pleasing to hear Minister Teeny, who was a speaker as well, talk about groups and committees she has had conversations with, and she mentioned PUCV, the Peri-Urban Councils Victoria, was one that she mentioned. So we are getting a voice out there, the Peri-Urban Councils Victoria, so hopefully down the track somewhere we'll get specific funding relating to peri-urban councils. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Councillor Dudzik.
As mentioned, I attended the councillor coffee and chat at the Daily Market, and lots of people came armed to ask us questions, even with books of what they wanted to tell us. And we've followed up a number of issues from that. Apart from that, I've got nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dudzik. Do I have a councillor to move the councillors' reports? Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Tatchell. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors, the next item on the agenda is urgent business. I will again go around the room. Councillor Sullivan, do you have any urgent business?
No urgent business, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ward?
No, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tatchell?
It's a quick one. It's probably just more about if we could find out a report on the 1 hour parking in Belen now that we're actually sending a parking officer up there. You can't have lunch in an hour in Belen. So we probably, it was all right when there was no one coming up here to book people, but now they're getting booked. So we probably need to have another look at that and see what's fair and reasonable. And just, if I could just acknowledge John Spain in the room. He's come to council tonight, and John hasn't been on council for 8 years, but I can tell you he was the wise head many years ago in the chamber, and a lot of the work that's come to fruition, John had his hand and would never take credit for anything, and yet John had worked incredibly hard to make things happen, and has been heavily involved in the community ever since with his work with the arts and of course the men's shed. So I just thought it was we should acknowledge John being here tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Tatchell. Councillor Edwards.
Sorry, I was on mute. No urgent business.
Thank you. Councillor Berry?
No urgent business. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Dudzik?
No urgent business, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. So there is no closed session of the meeting tonight. So thank you, councillors, officers and members of the public for attending this evening's meeting. I now declare this meeting closed at 6:54. Thank you.